Okay, I'm down. Our guests who are coming on are Milton Perez, who is an activist and a homelessness union leader with Vocal New York. He spent over 5 years in the shelter system. We're also bringing on Eugene Puryear, a journalist at Breakthrough News and the author of Shackled and Chained: Mass Incarceration in Capitalist America. And both Milton and Eugene have been at recent protests around the killing of Jordan Neely. So welcome, Eugene and Milton.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I thought we could start off. We're obviously going to be talking about Jordan Neely, who was 30 years old and who was choked to death on a New York City subway train on May 1st. But I thought we could start by watching just some footage of someone who actually who videotaped what happened, his recollection. This is from Democracy Now!
People were arrested at a protest Monday night demanding justice for Jordan Neely, 30-year-old unhoused black man choked to death in a subway car last week by another passenger. Jordan Neely was crying out that he was hungry and thirsty when he was fatally attacked on the train by a 24-year-old former Marine named Daniel Penny. Penny was interviewed by police detectives, but was released. He has not been arrested. Monday night's protest follows a similar demonstration Saturday when police arrested 13 people at a protest where they went onto the subway tracks and demanded Penny face charges. This is Juan Alberto Vasquez, an independent journalist who was in the subway car and filmed the fatal chokehold. He's speaking to NBC News.
The man got on the subway car and began to say a somewhat aggressive speech, saying that he was hungry, he was thirsty, and he didn't care about anything. He didn't care about going to jail, that he didn't care that he gets a big life sentence, and it doesn't matter if he died. If there was fear, the people who were bluish or who were there, where he separated everything, moved from their place. I stayed sitting in my place because it was a little further away. But obviously, those moments, well, one thinks fear, one thinks he may be armed.
The law firm representing Daniel Penny released a statement Friday expressing, quote, condolences to those close to Mr. Neely and adding, quote, Mr. Neely had a documented history of violent and erratic behavior, the apparent result of ongoing and untreated mental illness. When Mr. Neely began aggressively threatening Daniel Penny and the other passengers, Daniel, with the help of others, acted to protect themselves until help arrived. Daniel never intended to harm Mr. Neely and could not have foreseen his untimely death. The law
I'm concerned, there's no reason to put hands on somebody just because you're afraid of them, So some of the phrases that I'm hearing, aggressive speech, things of that nature, I've never heard before. It's, makes no sense to me. And even though there were warnings about the video and, this, that, and the third, I was not prepared to actually, see what I saw. It's basically being somebody basically strangled to death. Those that have avoided the video, continue to do so. This is something that made me sick. It was sickening. And then you just see the headlines and some of the reporting by the press, just the continued dehumanizing of a homeless person, blaming the victim, throughout, being a native New Yorker, growing up here, through middle school, high school, living in the Bronx, and Brooklyn for the past over 5 years now to the shelter system, and I'll be in my own place. The people that I've been around, this is not an acceptable thing to do. There are fights, there, all kind of things that happen. But when it gets to the level that somebody, is grab somebody by the neck, it stop. Say, hey, what are you doing? You choking them, you killing them. Stop it. You grab people, you separate people. So to not only see that did not happen, and they went beyond that, as somebody actually fighting for their life. You have somebody else holding them, preventing them, from fighting back. It's just beyond my understanding. I've never seen that. It's something that's not acceptable in any world. That I've been in, whether it's in the shelter, whether it's in the projects, this is not something that's acceptable. Horrible things happen, but it's not acceptable. This is something that is sickening to my mind, my soul, and I appreciate those who have spoken out against it, and hope they continue to do so.
I don't know. The thing that really struck me the most is the statement he's released through his lawyers, where they were also making these negative statements about the history of Jordan Neely. But here's the reality. Daniel Penny didn't know any of that when he decided to take his life. So that's actually totally irrelevant to what he did. And as we know, no eyewitness has actually claimed that there was direct, threats or him attacking people or whatever. And look, I take the subway every single day. I'm relatively new to New York. This is my 3rd year here, but on Monday through Friday, a lot of things happen. A lot of people yell. I've actually seen this exact situation of someone who's angry, fed up, yelling. I've seen people having, mental health crises. I was on a train last year where someone was really having a crisis, tried to stab some people with a hypodermic needle. So things go down. But even in that last situation, which I mentioned, no one was trying to kill the person. And I think that ultimately we have to look at the fact that Jordan Neely was, yes, he might have been yelling. Yes, he might have thrown down his jacket. Yes, he might have said, I'll do whatever. But none of that is a license to kill. And self-defense as a concept is about using responsive force. So I actually think that the fact that people are calling this self-defense is also slander on so many of the people, especially from oppressed communities who have had to defend themselves against, unwanted attacks and other things over the year. This is not that. Daniel Penny just decided that he felt Jordan Neely was a threat that had to be taken down. He decided to use what almost anyone knows, especially a Marine, is a potentially highly dangerous maneuver, even when it's done for a short period of time. And he chose to do it for an extended period of time. And I feel that now all we're really seeing are these attempts to muddy the waters and not ask, to me, what is really the ultimate question here, which is how do we even end up in a place like this where someone didn't have stable housing, didn't have enough to eat, didn't have enough to drink. I've had the opportunity to talk with some of the people who dance with Jordan Neely, who are a part of his circle, talking about his talent. And you just think, why do we live in a society where someone like Jordan Neely was choked to death and not a place where he could be using his talents not to survive, but just to entertain and to thrive and to do more? So to me, all of what Daniel Neely is saying is Penny, all of what Penny is saying is 100% besides the point and not relevant to the fact that Jordan Neely was not attacking anyone, had not directly assaulted anyone, had not done anything other than speak loudly and throw a jacket on the ground. And this person decided to kill him. And what about him? We don't know anything about him. They're telling us everything that we need to know about Jordan Neely or what they think we need to know. But what about this guy, Penny? What's his background? From what I've been told, and again, I'm not from New York, but people I know on Long Island tell me the place he's from on Long Island, West Islip, has a reputation for being extraordinarily racist, for being a place where things are going on. So I want to know more about his background and other pieces like that. But let me, before I get you on a high horse here, stop there.
For those of us that haven't spent time in New York City, encountering people, in not their best times and having some issues is not terribly uncommon. And I would venture to say that we've all probably, bore witness to a much more quote unquote threatening, outbursts at times than, what's been described here. And none of which, like Eugene was saying, would justify someone becoming judge, jury, and executioner, to this young man who just was a victim of our broken society. And just as a personal anecdote, when I was I told Milton this earlier, that when I was younger, a jerk that I was working with put me in a chokehold for literally no reason, just out of the blue, and choked me out. And that, from start to finish, from the start of him grabbing me and me blacking out, couldn't have been more than like 15, 20 seconds tops. And so to my mind, let's say, for the sake of argument, that I accept the narrative like, oh, you're just, de-escalating, or you're addressing a threat, which I don't agree with, but let's say, okay, that's your argument. To me, then, being a trained military, a Marine, so you can't claim ignorance, the minute that continues past, say, 20, 30 seconds, you're no longer doing that. Then you're just flat out killing this person, And but also, when Eugene was talking was making me think, and again, I was talking Milton's ear off earlier about this, that when, to me, and tell me if you agree or disagree, Eugene, but I think that in our society, we kind of stigmatize and, talk about, focus on like, oh, what are the skeletons in the person, the victim's closet here, and paint them to be the bad person and paint them out to be scary, or all crime happens in the subway and fear these people and all that. All that does is to further condition us to view the unhoused as less than people, even so far as like animals or something, to which when I thought about it some more, I thought, in a way that kind of makes sense, because if you were to view them as true, full human beings deserving of, dignity and respect and things like that, it would make it a lot harder to just, keep walking past
Walk down the street.
as you saw them on the sidewalk. If you saw them as real people, it would be a lot. So in a way, I understand for people living in this broken society, it can kind of be a defense mechanism or a survival instinct, because it would just be so hard to deal with without building up that wall. But I think that wall, it was put there on purpose, which also then allows this sort of horrible thing to happen, because I don't think if the same, freak out were being done by a well-to-do, wine mom or something like that on the subway, I don't think that the outcome would have been the same thing. I think it was because this person was viewed of as less than a person.